I first came to know Ted Nash at the University of Pennsylvania, the Penn Elite Center, when I arrived from lightweight camp after being cut, and I knocked on the door. Knock, knock, knock. When I knocked on the door, Lloyd Miller answered, and I noticed that Philadelphia seemed to be significantly more diverse than where I'd come from, the Washington crew. What I didn't know was that this was an illusion, that myself and Lloyd Miller at the time were basically the only two African Americans on the row. So that was kind of a lesson in diversity that Ted Nash was responsible for both people of African descent on the row at the time. The other thing I wanted to relate about Ted Nash was a story about his personality, and it had to do with a crash that I had on the river. It was a Sunday. It was wicked, steamy hot, and I was training for the Pan American Games in a pair, coming down lane 3. When I was coming down lane 3, and lane 4 was the boat that eventually ended up being the Pan American pair, and this was our last match race, 1,500 meters from the starting line, from the schoolboy starting line to the finish line, and we were right about 700 meters into it, halfway down. Ted looks over and he says to us, he says, Majik, take a look at that rental boat in front of you. I want you to make sure that you don't hit them. So I looked around behind me, and what I saw was what looked like a rental boat in lane 3, my lane, with its bow pointed towards lane 4, the lane that Bill Donahoe and John Jablonic were in. And since the boat looked like it was pointed to go over towards lane 4 and I was in lane 3, I figured I'd just cheat a little bit and move towards lane 2, and the boat would be Bill Donahoe's problem. So I cheated over a little bit, headed for lane 2, and wham! I was right into this rental boat. And we had blown our way about 2 feet into the 10 on the rental boat, knocked everybody down in the thing. Lucky for us, we didn't spear anybody or kill anybody or throw them out, which usually happens. And Ted motors over. I thought he was going to be angry, but he wasn't angry. He just motored over and opened up his toolbox and got out the tools that he had for, decoupling a speared rental boat from a racing shell. And he looked over at the guy in the boat and he said, "What's your name, son?" And the kid in the boat was about 14, 15 years old, and he said, "My name's Butch, sir." He said, "Well, Butch, I want you to move to the bow of the boat, and I want you other two to move to the stern of the boat and balance it out while I fix the 10. So he fixed the 10 on the rental boat, and once he had that all done, he worked us away from the rental boat, and he was just getting ready to push us off. So pushing us away from the rental boat, he realized that we had torn a hole right at the water line and that the rental boat was going to sink if he didn't do something. So he said to Butch, "Butch, are you cold?" And Butch said, "No, sir, I'm not cold." And he said, "Butch, I'd like to have your jacket, please." Now I got to give a little description about Butch's jacket. Butch's jacket was a $300 Girard college jacket. And this is back when $300 was a lot of money. And Girard College was not easy with their jackets. And Butch looked like he was somewhat proud of his jacket, so he took it off and he folded it up very carefully and he handed it to Ted. Ted snatched the jacket out of his hand, poked it in the outside of the hole, pushed us off, and away we went. And now I'm gone from, the sadness of losing the Pan American Games trials and not being an Olympic or a Pan American oarsman to thinking it's kind of comical what happened there. And Butch is looking like a cement truck just ran over his puppy. But that's all over. He's working his way back towards the other side of the river, and we're out of there rowing back towards the boathouse. And Ted stops the boat. He stops his launch and he looks back, and I swear a ray of light came down on the clouds parted, and it got a little bit brighter, and I don't know why, but I think of that, but I do think of that. And Ted picks up his megaphone and he says to Butch, Butch, Butch. And the kid says, yes, yes, yes. He says, Butch, I don't think you're going to get your deposit back.